Hi everyone, happy Pride. I think that filming this thumbnail was my legitimate workout for this week. My name is Jen. If you're new to my channel, hello. I'm an author and a book reviewer. I am also queer, I'm bisexual. Hello. So from my queer heart to other queer hearts out there and those who identify under the LGBTQ plus umbrella, hello, happy Pride Month. And today we're going to talk about a heck of a lot of books. I have filmed loads of LGBTQ plus book recommendation videos in the past. And what I tend to do is when I film a new one, I will quickly recommend queer books that I have read since the last video that I've enjoyed. And then I will also talk about new queer books that have come onto my TBR since then as well. So the last LGBTQ plus book recommendation video that I filmed was in March 2019. So we've got 2 years worth of books here, which means that we have about 50 books or more to talk about. So I should probably get started because otherwise we're going to be here for a long time. I suggest grabbing a cup of tea and let's go for it. Okay, number one. This is Record of a Night Too Brief by Hiromi Kawakami. It's translated from the Japanese by Lucy North. This is a collection of dreamlike novellas about a woman who is dreaming about losing her girlfriend in various different ways, and that's represented by her girlfriend being a porcelain doll or something that she has to eat and swallow. Very surreal, really cool. This is Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. This is a book that I would say is probably aimed at teenagers, but I would recommend it for adults. I certainly enjoyed it. It was one of my favourite books of last year. The main character in this, Jam, is trans and she is trying to save her friend Redemption from a monster in his house. It also has magical realism in it. This is Disability Visibility, edited by Alice Wong. As a queer disabled person, I'm very interested in the intersection of those things. This is an essay collection primarily obviously focused on disability, but it has a huge array of voices in here with a lot of queer intersectionality, so I'd recommend that. This is In the Dream House by Carmen Machado. This is her non-fiction book. I would also recommend her short story collection, Her Body and Other Parties. This is looking at an abusive relationship that she was in with another woman and chronicling that using folklore analysis as a starting point. It is so exquisitely written. Again, one of my favourite books of last year. This is The Vanishing Half by Bennett, which I'm sure you have seen loads of people talk about. This is a novel that is inspired by Passing by Nella Larsen, which is a classic, and a book that I think I ultimately prefer, but there are queer elements to this which aren't in the original, and it also has a trans character. It is primarily about colorism, but does have queer themes. This is At the Pond, Swimming at the Hampstead Ladies Pond. And like with Disability Visibility, this has a different agenda in that it's talking about wild swimming, but again, it has intersectional representation when it comes to queerness, and I really, really enjoyed reading it, especially discussions surrounding gender. I thought it was great. I have to recommend Bernardine Evaristo. I read several of her books last year. My favourites were Girl, Woman, Other and Mr. Loverman. Mr. Loverman is about a man called Barrington who's been in love with his friend Maurice since they were teenagers, and it is wholesome, but also it's just so astute. Her character observations are so wonderful. And in Girl, Woman, Other, this is chronicling 12 people, 11 women, one non-binary person through several generations. It is epic, and I have reviewed these in depth before and also interviewed Bernardine Evaristo, so I'll link those things in the description box down below. The Last Place You Look by Kristen Lepionka, I think is the first crime book that I have read with a queer female lead. This is the Roxanne Weary series. She is a private investigator, and the plot itself, so gripping. I could not put this book down, so good. I've bought the next 3 in the series. Here are 4 short story collections. This is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Deesha Philyaw. This is Outsiders, an anthology which has lots of different writers inside it, including a short story by me, Saltslow by Julia Armfield, and Things We See in the Dark by Kirsty Logan. Outsiders also has stories in it by Kirsty Logan and Julia Armfield. These 3 collections collections have magical realism elements and a lot of queer representation. Deesha Philyaw's collection is a realist collection of short stories, The Secrets That People Hide, and also has a lot of queer representation in it as well. Detransition Baby by Torrey Peters. I was thinking about how to do book maths on this book the other day, and I would say it's a little bit like A Little Life meets Sex and the City, except I didn't enjoy A Little Life at all, and I really did like this book. This book is hilarious, but also poignant and deeply moving, and will drag your brain in all kinds of different directions. I really loved it. It's about found family. It's about parenthood and what that means, and how we can bring families together. 3 people who are trying to decide whether or not they can create a family of their own in order to bring up a child when one of them finds themselves pregnant. It is about transitioning. It is about queer relationships, and it is about how trans community and the wider queer community is viewed through a heteronormative society. It's great. The House Opposite by Barbara Noble is a book that very subtly discusses sexuality. It was written during the 1940s and is set during the 1940s. And I thought that it was a really, really wonderful book. And I will link my review of it in the description box down below, because I had quite a lot to say about it, and I reviewed this one quite recently. A book that I listened to on audio and really liked was The Confessions of Frannie Langton by Sarah Collins. This is about racism, colonialism, slavery. It's about Frannie, who was brought over to the UK and had an affair with her mistress, and is now on trial for supposedly murdering her mistress and her mistress's husband. Sarah said in the introduction that she really wanted to write this to give voice to characters such as Bertha, Mr. Rochester's wife in Jane Eyre, and also it has lots of Dickensian elements to it as well. It has so much going on in it. I reviewed it for Toast, so I'll link that article in the description box down below if you would like to go and find out more. Another book that I reviewed for Toast was Frankissstein by Jeanette Winterston, so I'll link that review in the description box down below as well. This is about gender and AIs, is inspired by Frankenstein, and part of it is about the life of Mary Shelley. I think I enjoyed the historical parts about Mary Shelley the most. The modern day parts went for a bit of Black Mirror, but also a comedy romp style that I wasn't sure always worked, but it did intrigue me. This is here as a placeholder to remind me to talk about Sarah Waters, but I had already talked about Tipping the Velvet the last time I filmed a video, but I have listened to the rest of hers on audiobook. I still have a couple to listen to. Fingersmith I've been saving because it's most people's favourites, but I think my favourite since reading that one was The Paying Guests, which is a novel that turns into a crime book about halfway through, but it starts out being about a woman and her mother who need to earn more money, so they let out a room in their house, and then the daughter starts having a relationship with the woman who's moved in, but then it creeps into other territory, and it is a book that I've thought about quite a lot since finishing it. I did feel as though it went on a little bit too long in parts, but it's definitely stuck with me. This is a graphic novel by Emily Carroll, which is called When I Arrived at the Castle, and as you may be able to see, it's very sexy. This is a dark fairy tale queer retelling of Bluebeard. I mean, Bluebeard itself is a very dark fairy tale. I have a whole series where I talk about the history of fairy tales. Bluebeard is one of the ones that I have dissected, so I'll link that in the description box down below as well. But this is about a woman who goes to a castle where a very sexy woman lives, and they start up this relationship, but there are lots of rooms that she is not supposed to go into, and if you know the story of Bluebeard, there is a very gross reason why she's not allowed into those rooms. I think it's great. Speaking of fairy tales, this is Queer Folk Tales by Kevin Walker. This is not a collection of stories with queer retellings. It is using folklore elements and things that you would often find in fairy tales in order to create new queer folk tales, and I thought that it was delightful. Some of them are set in historic times, which make them feel, I guess, more traditional, and some of them are modern day fairy tale inspired stories. I've read several poetry collections since the last time I filmed a video. I read a collection called Queer Poets of Colour, which I would really recommend if you're looking for new voices. And then these are 4 other books that I've read. if you want to see my reviews of these, if you just search YouTube for my name and then the title of the book, it'll come up. So this is Hiromi by Dinez Smith. This is their third full-length collection. Love Dinez. This is J. Bernard's Surge. This is Mary Jean Chan's Flesh. And I think out of the 4 that I'm showing, this is my favourite. Loved it. And this is Refuse by Julian Rendell. Oh, sorry, there were 5. This is Human Wins, Not Here, which I think, along with Mary Jean Chan's, was my favourite out of these poetry collections. Derek Jarman is a writer whose work I've been getting into more recently. I have several of his books on my shelf, but this is one that I'm reading at the moment, which is called Chroma. And this is primarily about his relationship with colour as his eyesight deteriorates. He has AIDS. He's also talking about queer culture in art. And I have another one of his, which is about his love of gardening and his relationship with nature. I, of course, have to recommend Kay O'Neill, because they're just absolutely delightful. So there are 3 Tea Dragon Society graphic novels. This is the 3rd one, which is called The Tea Dragon Tapestry, which just came out. The first one is called The Tea Dragon Society, and it has lots of representation of sexuality and gender, as well as disability rep as well. Then they've also written Princess Ever After, which is a lovely graphic novel about 2 princesses who fall in love. This is Aquacorn Cove, which is a magical realism story which is about saving the environment, but also is about queer relationships, specifically between the protagonist's aunt and this beautiful female magical creature. And this is a picture book called Grandad's Camper by Harry Woodgate. This is a book about a young girl who goes to stay with her granddad, and her granddad is talking about Gramps, who is his partner, who passed away, and all of the trips that they used to go on when they were younger. It's full of nostalgia and love, and I adored it. Now let's move on to the books that are on my TBR. As we were talking about lovely graphic novels, let me start with a lovely graphic novel. This is The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jenny Wang. This is about a prince who wants to wear a dress, and there are other queer relationships in here as well. I haven't read it yet, but I don't know why, because every time I look at it, it just makes me smile, and the illustrations inside it are just wonderful. Let's talk about non-fiction. So this is Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Sexuality and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. This just came out and is, well, it is what the title says it is. And I've heard really, really great things about this one. And I'm always asked about books with asexual rep, and I know that there aren't loads of those, but this one I'm sure is going to be brilliant. A couple of other non-fiction books. This is Coming Out Under Fire, The History of Gay Men and Women in World War II. This is by Alan Berube. I also have Derek Frost's memoir on my TBR. This is about his relationship with Jay, who he met over 40 years ago. Jay was an entrepreneur and set up the gay club Heaven in Soho in London. He contracted HIV and passed away after 6 years of living with HIV/AIDS. So this is about their relationship, also living through the AIDS crisis. It's called Living and Loving in the Age of AIDS. And then it brings it up to the present day, talking about the charity that Derek and Jay funded before Jay passed away. And all of the royalties from the sales of this book go to AIDS charities, which is wonderful. I also have some novels on my TBR. This is Quicksand by Tanizaki. This is translated from the Japanese by Howard Hibbett, and it's about a woman who is in an unhappy marriage, and then she decides to take an art class in town where she meets the extraordinary Mitsuko, a woman as beautiful and charismatic as she is cunning, and then they embark on an affair together. This is Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austin. I think this is going to be quite a funny book. It's about a woman who is gay and she goes to volunteer at a church, I think, an inept receptionist at a Catholic church, and she's pretending that she isn't gay. It says that she's a lapsed lesbian in her overdraft and she cannot stop thinking about death. I just, every time I look at the blurb of that, I just think it's going to be really funny. It's coming out this summer. In fact, is it out already? Let's see, when are you coming out? 8th of July, so very, very soon. This is Our Undoing by Lorraine Wilson. This is a folklore. inspired novel, and the author got in touch with me and asked if she could send it to me because she said there was queer representation and disability representation in here, and I will be able to talk more about that once I have actually read it. And speaking of fairy tales, this is Beastery by K. Ming Chang, which is about, it's a generational story about a fairy tale about a girl who has a tiger tail, and the protagonist in this is called Daughter, who's falling in love with Ben, who is a neighborhood girl who is more bird than tiger and has mysterious stories of her own. And speaking of coming of age books, this is Dry Land by Sarah Jaffe. This is set in 1992 in Portland, Oregon, about 15-year-old Julie Winter who moves through her days as if underwater. It says that it is a tender, meditative and quietly kaleidoscopic novel about the 90s, queer adolescence and swimming. And then I have a few poetry collections on my TBR as well. This is Summertime Fine by Jason B. Crawford. This is, oh no, this is a book I've already read and should have been in the other pile. This is A History of Flamboyance by Justin Philip Reed, which is really fantastic. A book that I bought after reading Queer Poets of Colour is Otherhood by Reginald Shepherd, because I thought that their work was brilliant. This is What Seemed Alive and Altogether Real by Padraig Regan, which was recommended to me by a poet friend of mine. It says this is about paintings where the gaze of the male artist is directed towards the male figure in queerly erotic ways. And I've also recently purchased Chen Chen's collection, When I Grow Up, I Want to Be a List of Further Possibilities, which says, in this ferocious and tender debut, Chen Chen investigates inherited forms of love and family, the strained relationship between a mother and son, the cost of necessary goodbyes, all from Asian, American, immigrant and queer perspectives. So those are all the books that I wanted to chat with you about today. I know this has been quite a whirlwind of loads and loads of books, but as I said, I have listed them down below and I have reviewed all of the ones that I've already read, which you can go and seek out reviews for if you want to learn more about them or my specific thoughts on them. Anyway, that's it. That's what this video was. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope that you're all having a good week and I'm sending lots of love to you all. Bye.